بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير ونفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Okay, we're going to continue this very short session today, looking at one of the du'as of one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And he recited the dua, رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِّسَانِي يَفْقَهُوا قَوْلِي. So Musa alayhi salam, he was a prophet who was sent to the Bani Israel. And basically he was sent to the Bani Israel. One of the things that we know about the Bani Israel is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with a lot of prophets, lots and lots of prophets, more prophets than any other nation. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with many favors, like they've been saved from Pharaoh, that they were given rizq from where they perceived not. A lot of it's mentioned in many of the surahs of the Quran, like Surah Baqarah, like Surah Al-Araf, a lot of them. Anyway, the point is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the story of Musa Islam is this, that there was a Pharaoh at the time in Egypt, and he was in control. And what he did is he had ordered that all boys, okay, any newborn boys were to be killed, okay, because Pharaoh saw that the boys were kind of like a threat to him, and actually he had a vision, and in the vision he saw that one of the boys of Bani Israel was going to take over his people. So to try and curb that, he basically killed every newborn boy. He got him killed. Okay, and so what happened was that this likewise Musa Islam was born, and his mother, she was obviously worried that his child's likewise is going to be her son is likewise going to be killed. So what she does is she puts him in a basket and lets him and just puts him in the river, makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to protect the child. Eventually this child ends up being in the house of Fir'aun, okay, and the wife of Fir'aun, whose name is Asiya, anha, she's a great woman, one of the mothers of the believers. She says to she says to Fir'aun that we should keep him, we look after him, maybe he might be useful for us, not knowing that this is going to be the great prophet of Allah. Anyway, fast forward a bit more, he grows up, and you see one of the things about the Bani Israel is that the Bani Israel are the descendants of Yaqub alayhi salam. Yeah, remember we spoke about Yaqub had 12 sons, yeah, one of them being Yusuf and one of them being Benjamin, and they kind of dispersed to different parts of the world, and they were made up of basically these 12 tribes. Anyway, they eventually become enslaved, okay, to the Fir'aun. And there's an incident that happens while Musa alayhi salam is kind of like there, is that what happens to Musa alayhi salam is that there was a fight going on between a Coptic, an Egyptian, and one of the Bani Israel. Okay, so they have a fight, and Musa alayhi salam comes and he says to them, "What's going on?" And the Bani Israel, the Bani Israel person, he says, "Musa, help me." So Musa Islam, he punches the other guy and kills him, punches the Copt and kills him. Okay, this is mentioned in the Quran. Okay, so then what happens is that he says that this is an amal from the shaitan. This is something that's wasn't. How did this happen all of a sudden, right? And the state are after him because he obviously killed somebody. Anyway, he runs away. And then he receives divine revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he comes to the Mount of Tur, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him revelation of the things that he reveals to him. Is he tells him, you need to go to Fir'aun and you need to basically tell him to release the Bani Israel, okay, because he's enslaved them, and you need to basically tell him that you need to release them. Okay, now whilst Musa alayhi salam is on this mountain, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him this commandment that you need to go and speak to Fir'aun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows Musa with some miracles. Of them, he says that, what's this in your hand? And he says, it's my staff. I walk upon it, I rest upon it, etc. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, throw it on the ground. And he throws it on the ground and it turns into a snake. Okay? And then Musa Islam gets scared. And Allah says, look, la takhaf, don't be scared. This is a miracle from me. And Allah says, no, take it, but pick it back up. And he picks it back up and then turns into a staff. So this is a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, basically from that, you could basically kind of think, okay, well, this is pretty easy now. All you got to do, go to Fir'aun, say to him, look, this is the deal. Here's my staff. I'm not messing around here, right? However, this is very difficult because look at the backdrop. He's like technically a criminal. And now he's got to go there and basically tell those people what's right and wrong. Because one of the things about Fir'aun is he claimed divinity. He claimed that he was God. He said, قال إنني أنا الله, that I am a Lord. And so because he kind of claims divinity, this is obviously against what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kind of ordained. And so therefore what he does is that he start again. So basically Musa Islam, what he does is he's basically tasked now to speak to Fir'aun and to say to him that, this is wrong what you're doing, and to release the Bani Israel. Okay? And this is interesting because basically what is Musa Islam, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling Musa Islam to do this? Because Musa Islam has to basically speak to Fir'aun. It's a speech. And that's something interesting for us in terms of like when we try to give dawah. We can give a leaflet, we can give a pamphlet, maybe we can give a Quranic translation. But actually, the most effective thing of dawah is your speech. Yeah, what you actually say to people. That's the most important thing. You can kind of give books about the empirical kind of evidences for the existence of God and all these things, but in reality, it's what your speech does. And that's what is being shown here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending Musa Islam because you gotta go and speak to Fir'aun and speak to him. Okay, so then Musa Islam is like, okay, well, I need assistance in this. This is not going to be easy for me. So he makes this special dua. Okay, so he says, Rabbi shrah li sadri. Oh my Lord, expand my breast. Okay, expand my breast. Ishrah li sadri. Yes. Ishrah li sadri, expand my breast. Okay. Now, one of the things about Musa Islam that's mentioned was that he was someone who's quite angry from nature. And what they say generally, a person who's angry, they're tight-chested. So what he's asking Allah is to kind of expand my chest, soften my chest. And actually, what doctors say that if a person's stressed out, it's because their chest is tightened. So like there's like these kind of alternative medicines now. Someone I know has actually studied this about breathing, how to breathe properly. And so there's ways in which you can breathe, certain techniques which you can breathe to actually soften and calm yourself down despite what stress you're going through. Okay, but this is kind of the sharh of the sadr. This is kind of like the chest being expanded. Okay, and so there's this concept of kind of calmness, but also there's this concept of kind of nervousness as well. You see, when a person is kind of like tight-chested, they kind of get nervous. And remember, this is like quite a difficult thing for Musa alayhi salam to do. He's now going to go back into the same state, which is like effectively a security police state. Okay, he's got to hide from all these kind of security, basically get into the city, then go to the most biggest building in the entire city and go in there and start speaking to the leader of the people, who's probably like at that stage probably one of the biggest beings of the world at that time. Difficult, right? Quite a difficult thing to do. So he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease in my chest. Ishrah li sadri, ease my chest for me. Yeah, soften it. And this is interesting because the epicenter, the start of the dua is where? At the heart. And that's very important because every task that you do, every job that you do, everything that you've got to do, ultimately starts off at the heart. Yeah. If your heart's not in something, you're never going to perform well in it. It's like our job. If your heart's not in it, you're never going to perform well in the job, isn't it? And so likewise, like for example, our prayer. If your heart's not in the prayer, you're never going to enjoy it. You just won't. Okay. You have to come to a stage where your heart softens to the worship of Allah. Then you enjoy it. Okay. Then you enjoy it. And so he's kind of looking at the fundamental thing here. He's looking at the issue of the heart. And we know these words because there's a surah that's similar to this. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Now what's interesting is this surah, Alam nashrah laka sadrak, why did Allah reveal this? This was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ at a time when the Prophet ﷺ hadn't received revelation for a period of time. So he started to get upset. So Allah says, Alam nashrah lak sadrak? Did we expand your chest for you? Wada'ana anka wizrak? And we ease in the burden of you. Okay? So Allah, and that's interesting because the Prophet ﷺ, he starts to get upset when he's not getting revelation. Whereas like for us, when we have to read more Quran, we have to do more study of the Quran, we're like, oh man, it's just too much. You know what I mean? So you look how this was the kind of fundamental as far as as Musa is concerned. And so for us, how do we become of those who expand our chest? We expose ourselves to the Quran. We have to expose ourselves to the Quran. And that's important because the more you expose yourself to the Quran, and the more the Quran enters into your heart, the more basically kind of serenity comes to your heart. And that's the thing. Unfortunately, we have just seen the Quran as a book of recitation. We don't see any more than that. So we just see it like, okay, we think that our hearts will be softened, the more we read it and stuff like that. But that's incorrect. Okay, when we expose ourselves to the true meaning of it, then our hearts get softened. Like when you study like ayat of the Quran, Allah brings softness to the heart. That's a proven thing. We know that, right? We know when we do that, it doesn't bring softness to the heart, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, do they not reflect upon the Quran, or do they have locks on their heart? How do you unlock those locks? You have to reflect upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. So that's the first thing that the Musa alayhi salam asks for his heart to kind of softened and his chest to be expanded. Then he says, وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي, and make easy my affair, my thing that I've got to do. Make that easy. And that's beautiful because what does that mean? That basically is this Allah, Musa alayhi salam acknowledging that no one can make this easy except Allah, right? Anybody who's going to make this easy, like I said, think how hard it is. Okay, he's like he's like a criminal. He's got to go back into that same place, back into the same city, walk through the streets of the city, walk into the biggest building, and speak to the biggest don there, right? And you think that's extremely difficult. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who makes the impossible possible, right? That's the power of God Almighty. And so we should never ever think that something's too difficult because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who can make it easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who makes anything that we seem as difficult easy, right? How many a time has Allah withheld rain from the heavens? And we're hoping, oh Allah, rain come, and rain just comes. Where did that come from? And that, so the point is Allah is in control of the entire cosmos. And so all ease is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And what's interesting is that, the sequence of this dua is beautiful because Allah was the first to speaks about Musa alayhi salam, what's the first thing he does? Ask for my heart. Because when you humble your heart, then you'll be in a position when you realize who can make things easy. When you're arrogant and you don't know, when you become arrogant and your heart's kind of like hard, you're like, okay, what do I do in a situation of difficulty? What do I do? Where do I go? Who do I speak to? Yeah. When your sadr is given sharh, when your chest is kind of expanded, you humble yourself. And when you humble yourself, you realize, okay, I'm a poor slave, and I'm a slave of my master, and he's the one who can help me. He's the one who can help me in my situation. Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this is, وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي, make easy my affair. Now, this is general, okay? The entire thing, make it easy for me. Then what does Musa alayhi salam do? He personalizes it. And one of the things about Musa alayhi salam is, he has a stutter. He struggles with a stutter, okay? So now he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِنْ لِسَانِي, untie the knot that is attached to my tongue, okay? Meaning that he has a stutter and he's worried that he's now have to speak to this big dude, Fir'aun, and I'm going to struggle trying to speak to him because I've got a stutter. So help me out in this, okay? And that's important. Whenever we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we recognize who he is, okay? And we make dua generally, and then we personalize that dua. That's what we learn from Musa alayhi salam. Personalize it. First thing you should always do, make dua for everybody. Make dua for everything, for all affairs, okay? And then you personalize it. Rather than just saying, I need this, me, and that's it. We shouldn't kind of like be selfish in our du'as. Rather, we should be kind of open in our du'as. People say, oh, make dua for me. And that's just become a bit of a, just a cliche statement, isn't it? Oh yeah, just make dua for me. How many of us actually make dua for those people? I was thinking about that the other day. People always say, oh yeah, dua karna, make dua for us. But how many of us actually do that? Like, you know, what I've tried to do now is whenever someone says that to me, write it down on my phone, just so I remember. So I actually fulfill that covenant. Because we say, oh yeah, inshallah, don't worry, yeah, we'll do it. We never do. You should think about if anyone asks you for dua, and it could be, you see, the success that you have, you don't know whose dua Allah has accepted. The success that you have, the security that you have, the health that you have, you don't know whose dua is that Allah is kind of making for you and Allah is accepting. All right? Could be yours, could be somebody else's. And so we should always think about that. Anyway, he says, he makes dua for himself and he says, look, I've got this stutter, I've got this problem, untie it for me. Wahlul, yeah, take out this knot that's in my. And this word uqad, uqad is something interesting because uqad is like, it's like a knot that's like tied up. Okay, it's kind of like, it's like a knot that's kind of tied up and it's kind of like, it's quite messy. Now, what's interesting here is that if you think about it, if a person whose chest is hard, okay, when they go to like for example, let's say they've got to speak to their spouse or they've got to speak to their employer or they've got to speak to a relative, and if they're if they're nervous, they start just jumbling stuff up and making things up and just not speaking coherently, like an uqad, like a knot, which is like with a knot you don't know where the start of it, where's the end of it. It takes you ages to take it out, isn't it? So likewise here, what we take from this is that if, the uqad, the kind of like knot that's kind of like stuck in kind of our speech, he's saying just take it out, make my speech clear, make the start of it clear, make the end of it clear, make me you know speak coherently. Okay, that's what he said. And so this is really important, when like sometimes we have presentations at work or we need to speak to like family members or we've got like talks to do or whatever. You should think about this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can really kind of like and visualize it that I'm about to, like, for example, speak, and I want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to untie that knot, make me coherent, make me speak well. And that's important, even from a dawah perspective, because this is talking about dawah, isn't it? This is about Musa talking to Fir'aun. We should think about that, when we speak to non-Muslims. We should, Allah wants us to be coherent communicators. Okay, so many people just yabble nonsense, and just think, even on members, some of the stuff people say, you just think, oh my goodness, man, who gave him the mic type thing? You know what I mean? And so it's important that we are effective in our kind of discussion. And actually, that links to the final point. Yafqahu qawli. Okay, so that they understand, they have faham, not just yafhamu qawli, yafqahu qawli. They have like deep understanding of what I'm saying. Okay, and that's interesting because the speaker should always understand the audience. Okay, like a person who's kind of like a scholar of language, Arabic language, yeah, and speaks in so highly of all the different, knows all these different technical aspects of Arabic. If the people don't even know Arabic, what's the point in trying to tell them all this stuff? That's very important. And Musa alayhi salam's here is saying this at the end, that all of this, what's the point? So he actually understands what I'm saying to him, right? And he's thinking about it, because think about Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam, he knows Coptic language, he knows Hebrew, and he knows Arabic. So, but he has to speak to Fir'aun in his language, right? And that's like, sometimes, we have like, faith leaders and kind of people just not speaking in the language of people. And that's a shame because, that's so important for us if we're trying to spread the message of Islam, to speak in the language of people, isn't it? And so he kind of, one of the hadiths of the Prophet, Khatib bin Nas ala qadri uqulihim, speak to people at their level, at the level of their mind, speak to them. There's no point trying to have such a intellectual discussion with kids. You know what I mean? But likewise, no point speaking slang to adults. So a person who's like speaking has to be aware of that. Okay, and has to kind of like think about that. And so this is it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of Musa alayhi salam beseeches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by virtue of this, and Allah takes out that knot in his tongue, and he's able to speak to Fir'aun. Fir'aun obviously rejects. Okay, we know the story that Fir'aun then goes after Musa, goes after the Bani Israel, and Allah brings punishment after punishment to Fir'aun's people. And at the end, he says, just about before he's about to drown, okay, now I believe. But it was too late then. It was too late then. So, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Surah Taha, verse number 25. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to kind of take from this. You see, one of the things is important is that, we can make dua in any language, and it's totally fine. We can make dua in English, we can make dua in whatever is fine. But the prophets, they had a great attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so their du'as were like powerful du'as. Like their du'as were like substantial du'as. Musa made this du'a, the entire Bani Israel walked out with him. you understand? So likewise, the du'as of the Prophet, the Prophet made du'a of Battle of Badr. Oh Allah, if you don't give victory to your people today, no one's going to worship you after that. They walked out victorious, right, with only 14 casualties. You understand? So the du'as that the prophets make are very important because they also have an attachment with Allah. So that's why it's important to internalize them. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got to say today, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.